Hey, I know you. It's been a little while, but I remember, and you look older, no doubt. I haven't posted anything in, let's see, almost a full year ago was the last time I posted on this channel. Today's video, I dive into why. But before I get into that, I wanted to tell you about a couple of things that are changing immediately. So I've had this little channel for a long time, and it started as just a travel vlog, following my family around when we sold everything we owned and just hit the road. And it was sort of a travel vlog, just to follow our journey. And then it became a tobacco channel. And then I started talking about some of my personal beliefs and views, and YouTube just didn't like any of that. Didn't like the tobacco stuff, didn't like some of the things I was talking about in general. It just made it bad to connect advertisers with the channel, and I think sort of limited the growth that I could have potentially had if I was focused on a channel or had a channel that was talking about, safe things. Anyways, a lot has changed in the past year. One of the things, however, that hasn't changed is my passion and continued pursuit of making myself better as best I can. And well, I get into a lot more of that in the interview, so I won't go down that rabbit hole. But I did want to point out one of the things that is happening with this channel, and that is that I am moving directions with this channel, taking it out of the tobacco and cigar space, which is unfortunate. I mean, I still may sneak some in here and there, but that won't be the sole focus of the channel. And really, that hasn't been the focus of the channel for a long time. The focus of the channel really was to use cigars and tobacco pipes to introduce ideas and thoughts that I've had about my own life, struggles I've had, ways I'm trying to better myself. That part will not be going away. What is going away, however, is the tobacco products. In place of the tobacco products is something that I think is monumentally more important to us as people in general. And it's been an obsession of mine for about a year now. It's impacted my life already and will impact probably everybody's life who's watching this. But it may not be an interest of yours. But that's the direction the channel is going to go. I didn't tell you what the direction is. The direction is artificial intelligence.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
Which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer.
A robot you can talk to.
That you can log on to and have a conversation with.
Wondering how many people are like, huh? Is he joking? Is this a joke? He can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley. Either fortunately or unfortunately for you, that is the direction I'm taking this channel. For a couple of reasons. AI, like I said, is an obsession of mine. I'm terrified of it. I think it has some potentially good uses that it's going to bring, but overall, I think there's a lot of reasons to be very hesitant and scared of it. So it's a true interest of mine, but outside of that, it's impacted my life professionally, the work that I do, and thirdly, it's an area on YouTube that I think could bring a lot of traction because there's a lot of people searching for AI on YouTube, and there's just not a ton of content creators out there yet creating content for it. I would recommend give it a chance because most of the content is going to be similar to the content I had in the past, if you like that, where it's going to start off with something AI focused, but then probably shift and turn into something that, has been on my mind, meaningful and impactful for us, especially men in this day and age. Fourthly, it's a direction that I'm taking my life and my business is pursuing AI and using it as best I can, as much as I can, until, it ends all of our existence. So we have that to look forward to. Anyways, I didn't mean to make this intro too long. I just wanted to kind of introduce, say hello, reconnect with you specifically, and only you, actually. I think you're the only one here, but you've always been my favorite, so it's okay. But I wanted to do a little introduction before I get into the conversation I had with some of the greatest people I've been able to meet in recent history. And we had a good chat, I think. So I'm going to jump into that chat now. Are you excited? No. Fine. All right. I got to go. Leave me alone. Let's jump into the interview.
Fill us in. What have you been up to, man? We haven't talked to you in months.
Oh yeah.
How everything's going with the job and all that. If you want to get into it.
Oh yeah, no, of course. Yeah, you guys ask anything. So it's going well. It's going like this. It goes up and down, up and down. So I just I think I had told you guys, I don't remember, but in December, I was working with a startup. And that was my primary work that I did. I had a few other things. I've always done like freelance video editing is what I do, and kind of marketing stuff. But they were my primary client, and I had done that deliberately. My family and I moved from California to Tennessee, and part of that move, part of what I wanted to do was to get away from the multiple clients I had from California and the Bay Area. Because it just felt like I had so many different bosses. And so the stress level was really high. And so part of what we wanted to do in Tennessee was just kind of calm things down and alleviate areas of our life that we thought, we just added stress that didn't need to be there. And so part of it was work, and I wanted to have ideally one client. And so I worked for a while to get this one client primarily. And then in December, it all went away. It completely hit me upside the head. Had no idea that it just came out of nowhere. And so I was left in this place where I had gotten rid of all my other clients pretty much. So I was left with kind of like nothing, like, whoa, where the heck do I go from here? Really kind of was blindsided by it. So around that same time was when ChatGPT made its public appearance. And I took a deep dive into that world, into AI and the technology and how it's progressing and where people said it was going. And that added to my sense of like, what the heck am I going to do? Because like here, I don't have this client, and the video world and anybody in kind of the creative space, either what I do is going to go away, which I still believe and have seen that happen even more and more. Or in the short term, it's going to change dramatically, and I don't know how. And so I realized that at that point, I needed to pivot and do something completely different. Otherwise, I was just going to be following this train that was at the end of it going off a cliff, as I saw it. So I jumped into some software and really took a deep dive into the AI and where that was heading, even though I would love to hear you guys' thoughts, because this is what primarily drives me in everything I do. AI terrifies me, and I think it's really, really bad. But at the same time, it's like, until we get to that place, which could be tomorrow, there's a lot to be gained. And if you want to, for me, I make a living working in front of a computer. So I just realized I had to pivot. And so I pivoted into AI and using those tools and trying to bring those tools into companies and organizations that are of the same mindset that we know we need to use AI. Everyone else is going to use it, so we need to figure it out. So I tried to get on the front of that and started this company with a good friend of mine, which was a huge, risk and scary. And so it's been this huge up and down, trying to get this thing going. We'll do really well, and then it's like nothing, and it's just been, as it is starting anything kind of from scratch to some extent. It's just very up and down. So that's kind of what I've been doing, is just putting most of my time and effort anyways into trying to build and grow this thing. Because one of the things, I'm almost done here, but one of the things that I realized around that time was that in order for me to really try to get this going and try to bring, support back to my family, because I'm the sole provider in our household, was that I needed to give it everything I had. And so I started reading a lot of different people. And one of the people that was a good influence on me is Alex Hormozi, which I'm sure you've heard of. He's super popular guy who just talks about kind of entrepreneurship and business and that kind of thing. And one of the things that he said he did when he was in this sort of a similar situation is he realized he needed to say no to things, even difficult things, so that he could focus on this one thing that needed all of your attention to get it going. And I was kind of at a point where I was, at that time, I already, even when I was working with the client and everything was fine, I realized there were too many things I had going on in my life. I was trying to do too many things and being pulled in different directions. I needed to focus a little bit more. So that was already true in my life. And so when all of this happened, I lost that client. I started this company and tried to change really everything I had done. I realized like, okay, I've got to cut away basically everything so I can focus on this, which I did so really quick. And a lot of people I didn't even tell. Like one of the things that Alex Hermosi did and talked about and recommended, if you're really going to take something seriously that you really need to invest in or give your time, is like you got to cut out everything. And so he cut off even relationships for a while and told like friends and family, hey, I'm not going to be accessible. Like, don't even try to call me. I'm cutting out everything. And he did that for, I forget how long, like 6 months or something. And so I did something similar where I had to cut everything else that didn't directly impact this thing, because this was a big, it was a big blow in our family. And it was kind of like, I got to either make it or break it. Anyways, things are moving fast with AI and technology. I either do this or then what? I don't know. There's not really a security blanket to fall into. So anyways, that's kind of where I was when I left Guildsman for that time and stopped doing content, Suburban Pilgrims and all of that. It was, and other things. I stopped a lot of other things to just focus in on this and try to make a go of it. So that was a long answer to what have you been up to? But that's it.
If you don't mind me asking, how are you guys utilizing AI? Are you using it for?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we started sort of a marketing agency using AI tools, because I started using it a lot in my video content world so that I could make videos a lot faster, a lot more videos for like the same amount of money, which is one of the trends you're seeing right now in the video space and really the creative space in general. Is it's sort of a race to the bottom as far as price, because everything's just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And so yeah, we moved into the marketing space. That's something I had done quite a bit of. And so we're just using a bunch of different tools. That's the weird thing about AI right now, as far as the tools go, is there's new ones popping up all the time, and nobody really knows anything, about any of it. It's sort of up in the air. It's kind of like experts in AI as far as using the tools are just people like me who are just going through all these tools and testing them out, And so in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. And we're now kind of pivoting that and bringing it more into like we're working with companies to just bring AI across the board to all of their different teams, because we found in talking to business leaders and stuff, I don't mean to make this like a business podcast, but just kind of what I'm doing. We are, from talking to them, what we discovered is that, yes, they wanted AI marketing, but they wanted AI throughout their staff, because they realized that, a lot of companies had like planned on hiring this next year or this next quarter, and they paused all of their hiring because they thought, well, we can make our current workforce a lot more productive with AI. So let's just train them on AI and see how much more productive we can make them. And maybe we don't need to hire any people. And people have already made that jump, have realized, oh yeah, we don't need to hire anybody else. But there's not really a clear path on like, well, what tools do we use? How do we integrate AI? And so we're trying to fill in that gap and find a solution for people and companies that are like, we want to implement AI, we don't know how. Which is crazy, because I hate AI too. I think, it really does. It's like, it's the driving force behind why I really took the deep dive, because I feel like it could be, at best, it's going to change the world in massive, massive, massive ways. At best, even if it changes it for the good, it's going to be drastically different, I think. And it could go really bad from there, which is more likely. So I feel like there's this, that was part of it too. It was like when we started Guildsman, the whole idea with Guildsman was, make men better today than they were yesterday, in a nutshell. Whatever that was, for each man, there's something different they need to work on themselves, and they know what that thing is. But in general, we had this like vision of like, climbing the mountain. I would say, just like take one step forward toward making yourself better, and you'll see progress. And that's what we need to do. And the AI stuff, it's, the more I've gotten into it, the more legitimately concerned I am, to where I think I don't know how much time there is before, again, at least things change drastically. And so I guess part of me got selfish with that too, because I was like, I part of what I did when I cut out everything was for sure work on the business side to get that going, but also try to work on myself, which is what we did in Guildsman. And I was like, I just have to shut everything else out for a while, because it hit me in a place where I was just like, this just became very real to me. Because I mean, even if you're not scared of AI, I think any direction you look forward, could potentially look pretty grim, regardless. Even if you don't look forward toward AI, there's a lot of potentials in our future that I think are going to do the thing that we have said in Guildsman too, that I forget who coined the phrase, but it was that strong times make strong men. We know that. And I think no matter where we look in the future, we're probably going into a time where, weak men are going to be called to become strong men, and maybe a lot quicker than I had anticipated before. So it's a weird time.
I think if you're not at least somewhat concerned about it, you're pretty naive, because
I 100% agree. I think that you haven't done enough research. Like, it doesn't take much, but
that being said, you don't want to be the
people.
guy that decides not to go down that road, and then you're kind of left behind, because people will get left behind.
I know.
Yeah.
I know it's a weird time. It's a weird thing. That's exactly it. Because in the short term, like there's tons to be gained. But
what are some of the more interesting tools that you
I don't
come
even know
across?
what's long. It's weird because all of the tools are nothing's that dramatic that it's doing anything like really automatically. Obviously, it's just making everybody better and faster, and you're getting to an end result way quicker than you could before, where you still need like professionals and experts to kind of run it and filter it and use it. And so it's making experts just a lot better. But
still got to ask the right questions, right?
For now, yeah. Today, I'm just like, man, but 6 months from now, I don't know. That's, I mean, obviously that's where it's heading. It's like, you hear all these people talk about like prompt engineers and stuff. And I don't know. I kind of roll my eyes at that, because I think, well, that's today maybe, but next week, like that's where it's heading, is you don't need somebody to sit there and prompt it a certain way. Anyways, it's a weird world, and it's it's kind of like everything we were working on is still so needed, but for my mind, in the way that I'm looking toward the future now. And I tend to be a very positive person, but man, it has rocked my world for sure, to where I think, I just don't know how much time we have before it's like, I don't know. Who knows? That's the thing. Nobody knows what could come or what will happen. And that's true for any time in history. You never, for your own life, you should always live like you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. So I think it's just brought the reality of that truth into my mind, to where I'm like, geez, like all of those things I've wanted to do, wanted to work on, wanted to build, wanted to make myself into, or whatever. I don't know. It's like, you better do it now, because tomorrow may be here quicker than we thought. I don't know. I don't know. Where are you guys at with all of this? And I know, Mike, you have strong thought, and we don't have to make this an AI conversation at all. That was just kind of the background of where I've been, where my head's been, why I took a detour, and why I've been focusing on this. But we can go anywhere with the conversation. So I don't really didn't want to lead this too much.
Like when the internet first came out, when we were first, I don't know that it's, I mean, I guess it has the potential to be that revolutionary, but it's just sort of how it feels to me that whole time, when you weren't sure exactly what it was going to be used for and what it was going to look like, which direction it was going to go in. In a more simplistic analogy, I'd say it's kind of like when we first got cameras on our phones. I'm like, who needs a camera on your phone? What is this for? Now you don't go anywhere without it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of liked what Elon Musk did when he came out and said, let's maybe pause on it and just sort of see, roll it out a little bit more slowly than we are. So to me, that was a pretty wise, pragmatic approach to it. But I also, like Nick mentioned earlier, I mean, you see the benefit of being one of the prime movers, one of the early users of the technology and getting in before everybody else. And so I'm definitely torn on it. Yeah, I definitely get that scary, old people with robot vibe too a little bit.
Are you guys familiar with the YouTube channel Y-Files? The Y-Files?
No.
Okay, I'll have to after this. I'll have to send you guys a video they did a couple weeks ago regarding AI. It was very interesting. If you don't think the world's going to end, you will after you watch that. So
yeah, no, I mean, I 100%. I don't know if the world, nobody knows what the outcome's going to be. Like,
yeah,
there's the two mindsets, but it's hard if you really start looking at what is happening at these AI labs, and it's really hard to look at the future and think, oh yeah, things are going to be fine. It's just going to work out. It's just going to be good. I think anybody who thinks that really hasn't done enough research, and they really, really should. Like my wife, I drive her crazy with this because it's become, I don't want to say like my driving force, but it's to me the most important thing that we should be focused on right now, because it has the potential, again, whether it somehow works well and somehow we have control of it or it doesn't. It's if you don't think it's going to change the world very soon in drastic ways, like, again, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you need to look into it a bit more. And it's so interesting to me that people don't. So anyways, yeah, that's part of this. Like, I was talking to Mike before we started, like I'm going to be putting content out again that focuses more on the business side of what I'm building, but AI is the proponent for the business and for kind of everything I'm doing. So if that's going to be a big part of it, which is like kind of a shift in the content, but I really do. I just think people who aren't prepared and aren't really taking this seriously are going to be blindsided in some major ways really soon. And so, yeah, it's almost like one of those things you feel like, what I feel like? And so this is what pulls me back is I feel like when like global warming, which is still like a hot topic, but when people were just going crazy over like global warming and all this, I feel like one of those like leftist fanatics about AI now. But I'm just like, dang, like people need to kind of like, I don't know, at least do their own research and come to their own conclusion, but don't ignore it, like, because it's going to impact everybody in very, very big ways very soon. Anyways, that's my rant. I don't have to. I'll let you guys guide the topics wherever you want to go. Or you don't have to. I don't mean to put pressure on you.
I have a couple questions. It's funny. When Nick asked you what you had been up to, like I was going down checking off, like you answered all of my questions almost. So during that part, so that was good. Yeah, no, that was good.
For 20 minutes, 20-minute answer. I'm gonna have to cut this podcast up a bunch. It doesn't seem like just all me talking.
I'll ask you a question. I got one for you.
Okay. Yeah.
So obviously now you're stepping back towards Guildsman. How do you see yourself getting back involved? What do you want to do there? What's your goal?
Man, it's so. I was thinking about this before we started talking today, and it's so. I may cut this out of the episode, but I'm in such a weird, not a weird, but such a different headspace. And this is like where it gets kind of odd. Like we've talked a little bit about like my religious background, and Mike, yours is really similar to mine, right? Because you like grew up in the church. And what church background did you have, by the way?
To some extent. So I grew up going to church as a really young kid. We didn't go much after I got into the probably third or fourth grade. My grandparents were both, my grandmother on my dad's side, both my mom's parents were heavily involved in the church. And, my grandfather sang in the choir, and, they were always very involved. So I grew up around it. But my parents weren't, my dad's not really religious, and my mom doesn't, kind of keeps it to herself a little bit. So most of it, was plan, most of my, I don't know, I guess the way that I came to Christ was sort of, it had been planted as a seed as a kid, and I came back, but it was sort of my own journey and finding my way back. So I think we were a little bit different. I think you were pretty involved.
Yeah, very involved for a long time. Nick, what about you? I know we've talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah, I mean, I grew up I'm a Lutheran. Not that it matters, but I just grew up in the church, and of course, later in life, college years, I kind of drifted away. But I personally made the decision to get back involved, and we go to a Lutheran church here with the whole family. So my mom and dad go, and sister and brother-in-law, and a whole bunch of people we know. So it's a good community.
That's great.
so I've shared like my church and kind of religious background on my little YouTube channel. So anyways, I fell out of it for quite a while and went through like a discovery phase for a number of years, without going into details. But one of the things that the whole AI craze has done for me is really has reset me thought toward the future. And I don't know if it's good or bad, but I really do look at the future like, man, it's not, I don't know. I guess the way I faced or approached the future prior to AI becoming a public thing was just more like, well, the future is what I make it kind of thing. Like almost I'm in control of my future. The decisions I make for my life and for my family, that's going to dictate my future. And the AI thing really showed me, I think rightfully so, that you have no control over your future, whether you think you do or not. Tomorrow may be the last day that you have on this planet. And it really, it's still like, it's altered the way I think about kind of everything, including the way that I approach God. It's something that I had wrestled with and had been wrestling with for years, but it made me realize that like one of the things, I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan, and Jonathan Paju, who Jordan Peterson is good friends with, and they do a lot of things together. And they have some conversations about AI and what it's going to do. And one of the things that Jonathan Paju has talked about or said is we're moving into an era where giants are going to rule the world again, just like they did in biblical times, where we're not the dominant power anymore. And what Jordan Peterson talks about, if you're a fan, is you better get your life in order. Like now is the time. Like quit screwing around. And so that had never been more real to me than it has been in the past 6 months. And that's really been true for my spiritual walk as well, where I realized, and my wife pointed out, is that, you're wrestling with God in such a way that it's relying on you. Like this wrestling match has been going on for far too long, and you need to end it and figure it out. And with that combined with the AI nuttiness and realization that, things are changing, has really put me on a fast track to figuring that part of my life out and other areas. And so going back to your question, Nick, about like how I see my role in Guildsmen and Guildsmen in general, I have a totally different perspective on it now. I mean, it's still very similar. I still fully believe in the mission that we set out for, which is making men better. That's still, I think, even more so true. It's just that two things have changed. One is the reality that without a spiritual component in that, I don't know where we're heading and what we're doing. It's difficult because everybody has a different perspective on that. But I think the one thing that most of us can unite on is that there's good and there's bad, there's light and there's darkness in the world. But and that that's been true for me for a while. But I just think like one of the things that I feel like needs to happen in men's life anyways, they've got to figure out what they believe, I guess, at a core part of them. What do you really believe about your existence in this world? And if you've been struggling, with what that means and what truth is and everything as far as God, like it's difficult to move forward. It's difficult to have a reason to move forward, Like we talked about, you have to have discipline is built upon something inside of you, a truth inside of you, a mission, something that you value inside of you, a why. But without having, I think, a real understanding of what you believe existence is, life is, why does any of this really matter, without wrestling with those questions and coming up with an answer for yourself, you're sort of going to be like a fish out of water. You're just going to stumble around and consistently, at least from my experience, constantly be looking for, why am I doing this again? Why does this ultimately matter? So I feel like that for me was a big component that I did not have prior to this. And so that's one of the things that's changed. The other thing that's changed is, at least for me, the speed at which I need to change. And so like with Guildsman, and the way that I thought about it before was sort of like, none of us could give it, and still this is true, could give it full time. I mean, most of us just give it as much time as we can, which is very little, which means that growth happens slowly over time, because to really, you look at something like Guildsman, we're trying to build something. I say we, you guys, like Guildsman itself, the goal is to build something where it grows and reaches more and more men, so that eventually, I mean, the ultimate goal was that it could affect culture, in the future, like future generations could benefit from realizing that men need to stand up and accept and actually, I can't think of the word, but kind of carry or wear traditional masculinity in themselves, because it's been lost. And so I always saw it as like kind of a long-term, we'll keep working on it. But the other thing that's changed is just the time for me. I for myself, and I could be completely wrong, but I feel like, we don't have time anymore, I think, to screw around. But that is a mindset that we should all have, right? All the time, because again, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It could be your last day is today. So like you really, when you look at your life itself, you don't have time to screw around anymore. So I think the approach for myself, of just kind of, it's a long-term thing. We'll just kind of, build this, you go through trial of will, you go through trial of discipline. It's, to me, I'm kind of like, man, I don't know what it means, but it's almost like, I guess to put a finer point on it, it's almost like I want to surround myself with men who don't need hands held. They don't need to go through a structure. They're just kind of like, there's resources out there. Like, you can figure this out. Maybe we can all combine on resources. Anyways, I guess those are the two things, like the spiritual side, becoming a reality, and just the time of this, that we don't have time to screw around. Kind of, it's sort of like jump in with both feet and figure this out. I'm not going to hold your hand. You're just going to be left behind. It's kind of like I read, like I grew up in Northern California. So people who haven't grown up in Northern California, not all of them know the story of the Donner Party, who came westward. Sure. Yeah. And they hit the Sierra Nevadas at the wrong time of year and had to spend the winter up there and ended up eating each other. And, but what was my point on that? There was a point on that. Oh, along the way, if you read the journals of the people involved in the Donner Party, like their struggles began as soon as they started coming west. Like the Donner Party and what happened on the mountain is what gets all of the attention from history. But the whole traveling out there was brutal. And one of the things that they used to do in those parties, at least the Donner Party, was if you were kind of weak and old and couldn't keep up with the party, you just got left behind. Like nobody went back for you, because you would put the entire everybody else in jeopardy. So I guess that's sort of my mindset now, is like, I don't know, like if you need too much hand holding or something, then at least the direction I'm heading is not, I guess it's like, I don't have time for you. Like there's no time to screw around and waste anymore. I don't know. That's how I'd answer that anyways. I get that. You want people,
you want people self-motivated.
Yeah, exactly. Who already have some of it figured out. Because, as you start to move towards making yourself better, like you realize you do need other men, other people to hold you accountable, to keep you going. But, to sit there and try to explain like how you even get to that point is like, I don't know. It's not to say that there isn't value in that, for sure. It's just, that's the perspective change I've had over the last 6 months for myself personally is I don't know how much time we have.
We still see
This is
a
real
lot of
doom and gloom, isn't it? Everyone's
very,
going to
very
leave all
young
bummed
guys
out.
coming in. You know, we're still seeing a lot of really young guys coming in and kind of needing that initial direction. I mean, some of them seem a little bit, I don't know, kind of blowing in the wind a little bit and not really sure exactly which direction to take. So I don't know that they outright say that, but you see little quirky things like they come in, you know, trying to be big tough guy and things like that. And you know, so and one thing that you said is kind of funny. I mean, we've all started talking about how, you know, there's no way that we're going to move this forward without God involved. And you know, we really have been trying to think of a way to make that part of what we're doing, because it is really important to us. And been some really good debates in the spirituality section. Trevor, you know, Trevor, I don't know if you remember him. He's still in it. And I had a couple conversations with him not too long ago. He just wanted to know, you know, what was kind of going on behind the scenes a little bit. And yeah, I told him just that, and he was really encouraging and thinks it'd be a great direction for us. So yeah, that was interesting to hear you say that, since that's kind of what one of the things we've been talking about recently. But you still enjoying the occasional pipe cigar?
Oh
Have
man,
you? Yeah.
a lot. Yeah, I was looking for one. I thought I had one up here. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of cigars lately.
Yeah.
Because my son, who is 17, no, he's 16. So, I 16, I was like, okay, you can start having cigars here and there. And he loves them. So it's been this kind of cool thing that we do now. We go outside and set up the chessboard and smoke a cigar and play a couple of games of chess. And it's been awesome. Cool. We've been doing that. It started out where I was just like, okay, on your 16th birthday, you can have a cigar, you know. And then it was like a couple months later, it was like, okay, well, that was cool. You can have another one. And now it's happening more and more frequently. So it's probably, I don't know how good that is, but it's been awesome. So I've really gotten into those a bit more. Yeah. I'm loving it.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
The spiritual thing, like that was always when we started Guildsman, that was always one of my hesitations. Well, one was that I just didn't know where I was at. So I was like, well, I don't want to bring that in if I don't even know what I'm thinking. But the other thing that's tricky with that, I feel like, and maybe not, maybe you guys have a solution, but it's like, it seems like that is, we're combining two of the most controversial elements, right? Like politics is just a part of it. Like, I mean, we're aligned with, it's just everything's politicized now. So if you line up with like, no, men should be men, traditional men, it's like, okay, well, you already are aligned with a particular political party. And then if you bring in religion, it's like, no, there's a religious component to this. Then you have to figure out, well, where is the line? Because obviously, you know, people have different views or different, you know, whether you're Presbyterian or you're, I don't know, you're Catholic, you're whatever, you know, it's like, well, where do you draw that line? And that's what everyone would want to know, I would assume, is like, well, what does that mean? And then you just keep it vague and you're just like, oh, we just, you know, just God. So I don't know. That's all that was always the thing in my mind is like, well, how do you figure that out? If you're like an organization or a group where you're trying to invite others to come into this thing and we're all motivated by something somewhat similar, like what is that thing? Have you guys had discussions about that? I'm curious if you had, where did you guys end up with that?
A little bit, not, it's kind of funny. I think we're all pretty closely aligned. I think when I say all, I mean CM, Nick, Mick, and myself. I think we're all pretty similarly, or, you know, have a similar belief system. Same with like Trevor and you know, Jeremy, some of the other guys. But, you know, I mean, to me, part of what we're doing is trying to find truth, you know, eventually. And so, And while we haven't specifically talked about it, I mean, to me, the truth is, like here, I mean, this is where truth lives, and I don't know that you have to get too far away from that for a philosophy. I don't know, Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that pretty much. Essentially, I mean, I don't know if you have to. Should be rooted in, Jesus. But other than that, I mean, everybody's going to have their own little take on it. So
Sure. Yeah, I mean, do we go to the point of calling, saying that people who are Catholic or Mormon, they're not Christians? I don't think so.
Maybe.
But I do think.
I'm kidding.
I mean, but no, I've heard pastors make that argument. So that's what I mean. I mean, not that we would necessarily do that, but I mean, I've heard people make that argument. So I don't know.
Isn't it a weird thing? Like that was one
Christian.
of the. That was when I was like involved in kind of like what was going on, Guildsman. At some point, it feels like you're just like dealing with high school drama. You get these men together in this group. And there's so much, not so much, but you sometimes get a few people that begin to, I don't know, complain or want things their way. And it's amazing how they can kind of disrupt the entire unit, what was like a pretty unified group. It's amazing how like one person, one voice can come in and just really start to rattle things quite a bit. And so then I think, well, you introduce the religious side, there's going to be more opportunity for that. So then it also, you have to figure out, okay, well, we have to build a structure around that. And how do we deal with disagreements? And at what point, so then the whole thing becomes this, a constant discussion about building the thing. It's so interesting. I've never done anything quite like this, but, just building like a group of people with sort of a what you would think would be a pretty unified vision. Like we just are going up this, you guys, the first thing you hear from me after you haven't spoken in a long time is the mountain analogy. But, to me, the idea was so simple. Like, I don't know what's at the top of the mountain. Let's just go up there. It's better than here. We need to move up there. And then you just don't realize along the way how many little not disagreements, but just you imagine, at least I did in my mind, it's going to be kind of this adventure. We're just going to like trek up the mountain and hold each other to a higher standard and pull each other up. And then you get into the weeds of it and you're like, dang, we're still in the parking lot dealing with like, what kind of shoes do we wear? And which route do we take? And it's like, this isn't what
it becomes more Holy Grail than Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's like,
yeah, that's it.
You're thinking I'm going on this great adventure, and then it turns out to be, stuck here with the knights who say knee,
Yeah, it's so true. It makes me wonder if what appear to be successful organizations that have grouped people together, churches is the closest thing that I can relate to, having been involved in different churches at different scales. You realize the inner workings of churches, there's just as many issues there. So you wonder, some of the organizations you look at that seem to have it together, either did they actually figure something out and actually have been successful with it? Or is that just all it is? It's just dealing with the weeds of disagreements and structure and how do we deal with that? Is that just what it is all the time? And because you're grouping together a bunch of people who are just flawed people. Like I had this discussion, my daughter's in a pretty serious relationship for our first time. And so we've been talking about, just like what marriage looks like and things. And it's like, it's a weird thing because you're bringing these two very flawed people together. And then you realize that their whole family is like flawed, even as bad as yours. And you think your family is the most flawed. It's like everybody has these issues. So when you bring a bunch of people together with what seems to be a unified vision, it just I guess it shows you I don't know what it shows you. You need very clear direction, I guess. Very, very clear, strong leadership in those moments and very clear objectives as to where we're going and why we're going there, which comes back to why I think the religious part, having God at the forefront, is so important. But then, like I was saying, that also opens up a whole nother potential can of worms. It's so interesting.
Well, you just got to be able to be willing to hold to those principles, regardless of what people complain about, right? So you lay that foundation, and then there's a kind of a hard line there where you just, if people aren't willing to do it, oh well.
Exactly. Leave them behind.
Yep.
It makes me think about, really the founding of this country, because that's really what is built upon. Man, that's a pretty daunting task when you think about that. Like actually building a group of people and building the Constitution, and it just puts it into a different perspective. And I guess that's really, like you said, Nick, that's true. You do have to have a clear boundary of what's accepted and what isn't. And there's sort of no discussion around that. You like it or you don't. And,
exactly.
Maybe that's probably, I guess, helpful from the forefront in an organization and churches. Maybe that's part of the reason churches get a little shaky and rocky, is because some of those lines have been blurred. And prior, churches in older times, I think the lines were very clear. Like, this is it, like it or not. If you don't like it, fine, get out. But these are the lines. And as you begin to blur those lines, that's where the disruptions and the chaos starts to happen, is in the blurred lines. So I think having very clear boundaries is probably how you actually make progress up the mountain, I guess. You just don't ask questions. It's like, this is what we're doing, like it or not. Like, go start your own thing if you don't like it.
Turned away from church, right? Because of that, lack of really any kind of backbone to stand up to corruption and corruption of the message. Mostly not necessarily like embezzlement or something like that, but corrupting the message that they're supposed to be conveying, and then not having any kind of backbone to stand up and say, hey, this is actually wrong, in society right now. This is not right. It's great to stand up there. And I heard someone recently refer to it as hiding behind scripture, which I thought was pretty interesting. So they kind of stand back there and they just, talk about a verse or, chapter here and there, but they don't actually apply it to real life and say, here's how, you can clearly see what's going on outside is wrong. And this is why we need to, as a body, make a stand against this. And yeah, I think, what you're saying about blurred lines, I think that's, a lot of what's going on.
Well, and it's also, that's one of the things, like, we've really struggled to find a church. Like, we've wanted to get involved in one, and we tried some different churches, and we found a church that we really like. But the thing that I found was most difficult or what I realized I was looking for in a church, because I didn't know for a long time, I think, was a church that combined the teaching, the unity, the coming together of the church, like you do on a Sunday or a Saturday or whatever. But combine that with actual action of, like, because we're in a time in our country and in our world, even leaving AI out of it, of we really need people to take action and do something with this. Don't just go home and, like, okay, you did your thing. Like, I wanted to find a body of people who are like-minded, who believed in what I believed, who were doing something in their community. And that's really what part of what Guildsman was built out of. But it didn't have that spiritual side, it just had the potentially the action side. And I think that more and more, that's what you're finding, I think, across the board, men and women, but certainly with men, is men see, of course, the issues that they've had with themselves and the whole masculine, like, revolution kind of thing. But then it's like, well, what do we do with this? And we see all of these issues. And if you watch the news at all, it's nothing but, like, what I've been talking about, like doom and gloom. But there's a lot of potential gloom in our future. And so I think that you kind of have to, I was looking for a church that sort of sounded the rallying cry of, like, okay, now let's go and take action. Yeah. And that's what it still is, I think, missing. And probably,
Totally.
yeah. So I guess that's, maybe as I go back to the mountain analogy, maybe that's part of maybe there was a problem with the mountain analogy from the get-go, in that the idea of making yourself better is good, but it's always the for what? What do we, because there was always like, well, we don't know what's at the top of the mountain. We're probably going to get to the top of this mountain and there's going to be another one. And it's the pursuit forward, the pursuit up that matters. But again, coming back to, now I guess I'm repeating myself, but you have to come back to, why are we climbing this mountain? What are we doing this for? And there's a lot of, especially in our culture today, there's a lot of directions you could point that march toward finding solutions towards a problem. And anyways, that's something that I've lacked, I think, in churches and in just, I don't know, culture, social groups is, you meet with guys, you meet with friends, you talk, you shoot the bull or whatever. But it's like, at the end of the day, I'm looking at the future and it's like, man, like, we got to do something here. Like there's a lot to be done in making ourselves better and I don't know, preparing for what may come, or I don't know, just preparing others for what may come if they're not aware. I don't know where you point it, but I think maybe that was something that was flawed from the get-go, is just not knowing why are we going up the mountain, maybe, or where do we point that?
I mean, I get the making better men. That makes sense to me. I think what always was kind of like a sticking point was like, okay, how does that relate into the real world once we get there? How do we actually affect change in something?
Yeah.
That part of it was, still, it's a struggle because everybody's so spread out. You got guys all the way from Europe to the United States and everywhere in between. Yeah. I mean, outside of asking them to step up and do stuff in their community, which hopefully they're doing anyway, just being the type of men that we are, how does Guildsman specifically attack that situation? And I struggled with that.
Yeah.
Well, my answer before was always like, oh, we'll figure it out. Like, let's just get through this step. We don't need to look 1,000 years down the road. But in my mind, I was like, well, we have 1,000 years.
Yeah. I mean, you got to take action sooner or later. And that's where we kind of were. We just went with it.
Yeah. But it's difficult when you hit a rough part of that trail. It's like, man, then it's really easy to be like, I'm going back down. This is stupid. I don't even know what I'm doing this for. So it's like, if you don't have that. Yeah, exactly. What have we been doing here? Why are we climbing this stupid thing? Yeah, I agree. But that's been, that's like, again, going back to like the time thing of like, I don't know how much time we have. I do look at that differently, where it's like, well, we don't have, maybe we don't have 10 years. What if we don't? What if we only have the next 6 months? How do you get this to where you want it to be in the next 6 months? Because that forces the question of like, well, what do we want this to be? If we could magically wave a wand and say in 6 months, this is what we want to happen, what is it? And I can't answer that. I couldn't answer that from the get-go. It was just sort of like, I don't know, let's just keep going. We'll figure it out. But, if you reverse the time and stop putting an infinite time on it, and you just say, we have right now, what can we do right now? That's where I come back to how I view Guildsman now, where it's sort of like, well, I get rid of the weak, those that need a lot of hand-holding, they can't come along, kind of like there's no help there. So I like at the end of this, that was the goal, like a bunch of strong men who are impacting their world. And I'd never answered that question, but at least that was a part of it is like, you build strong men. But anyways,
I mean, we have
it really changed the way I do
for those people. I mean, I don't want it to make it sound like we just, go through the roles and just slough people off. But I mean, the information and the ability to reach out and the tools and the resources are there for people within the Discord.
But at some point you have to, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like if they don't want to go and make the effort to do that themselves, then
yes,
like you said, we're not going to babysit you. We're not going to constantly ping you, asking you to be involved and do it. Just, I mean, Be a lurker or get off the Discord, I guess. that sounds harsh, I know.
To me, like, no, but if you had a group of like a bunch of, if you had I don't know what number it would be, but if you achieve that goal of collecting a bunch of strong leaders, then it's like, okay, at some point, maybe we could start to go down. Okay, what's the next level of people trying to climb this mountain? Let's bring them up, and then they can help the next level, But to start at the get-go of the mountain with a bunch of like kind of weak, needy people, not that that's what our group is, or I'm not saying that, but you find them. You find people who just they need a lot of attention and a lot of and everything's difficult for them. Even asking them to go through like our basic trial of will is just like, oh, I don't know if I have the time. It's kind of like, okay, forget it. Like either you're going, ideally if you're reaching people who are already going through this themselves, because like we were talking about, like there's unlimited resources in the world to make yourself better. If you're not seeking that out already, then it's like, I don't know. You're probably going to be behind the wagon trail on your own if you can't keep up with the group, I guess.
Yeah, and we all kind of come at it at our own schedule too. Like I think for me it was pretty just serendipitous that I had kind of started on that little self-improvement journey right before I connected with you. So I've always tried to take that into consideration a little bit and say, maybe there's some guys who aren't quite there yet, or, maybe just they need a little nudge and they'll get there, or some guys that I can learn from who are already on the other side of it. So that's one of the things I've enjoyed about Guildsman for sure.
But now that we've answered zero questions, we've talked for an hour and got absolutely nowhere. No, I'm just kidding.
So Nick, what would you do? Like if you had to take, if I had a gun to your head and said, Nick, here's a hypothetical gun to your head, what next step would you take like right now? What would you do to...
You mean like personally as a man?
No, I mean to get Guildsman moving in a direction.
I hate
direction. That's a good
I hate to go back. I'm kind of sound like a broken record because we've talked about this within like the quote unquote management team, whatever you want to call us, OGs.
OGs, I like that.
Is just creating the content to bring more people into the fold. And we were kind of sitting back waiting on Jason. No, trying to figure out what that looked like, and that was kind of, I would say push that for right now. I just want to get people involved, see how many people that we can get involved that are on the same page as us, that we can build that core group of guys, which I think we have a good start. There's a lot of good guys in the Discord and a lot of people that have been there for a long time that contribute a lot. Definitely. And have a ton of great insight and are great men in their own right. So it's just getting more and more people like that involved till we can get to the next step, which obviously we keep going around in circles on. and none of us really know the answer to that question. But
yeah.
I hate to say a lot and not say anything at all, but there you go.
That's all I've done this entire episode. So that's what I do best at, actually.
This is a Seinfeld podcast.
Going, taking that to the next step. Like obviously you're going to bring. I didn't even realize this was going to be like quote unquote a podcast type scenario today. So great, everybody's going to know how dumb I am. What do you see the podcast structure being like going forward? Like what was your thought process on that? Obviously you're trying to get it going again. Or start.
Yeah, I was telling Mike before, my thought with the podcast is I'm breaking down something I had talked about in Guildsman and Suburban Pilgrims quite a bit, which is like, I had a name for it for a while, like Fab 5 or something stupid. And it was like the 5 areas that I think encapsulate your entire life. That are the 5 areas you should be working on constantly. It's mind, body, spirit, relationship, and work. Yep. And this past 6 months, my work was pulled out of the fold completely. So that's what I had to focus on, because it was like my that finger fell off my hand and I had to rebuild it, and, still am. So part of the podcast is it's focusing on one of those 5 areas. So I'm interviewing people, talking to people who are experts or interested in one of those 5 areas. And so a lot of it's going to be around the work side of my life now. So it's going to be talking about AI and marketing and stuff, which, by the way, I hate so much, which is one of the things I've learned in marketing and creating videos for people is so much of it's just BS and lying and fake. And it's just, I hate it so much. So it's so weird to try to build like an agency that's, trying to be different and get away from all of that. But at the end of the day, that's all people want. It's so tricky. But anyways, that's going to be a part of it. And then it's having conversations like this with, guys like you, that it's really what I'm passionate about. And if I had it my way, this is what I'd want to focus on. But, so there's like the passion side of becoming better. And all of it's going to be anchored, though, by those 5 things coming together in making yourself better, because giants are coming is sort of the idea. Is like, you've got to improve yourself in all of those 5 areas. So the podcast will hit on one of those 5 each episode.
Very cool. I like that.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's so interesting because, I think part of the problem we have with, or have had, and you guys are currently having, with finding direction, is that in general, in our own lives, in our own personal lives, we lack direction, probably, if we're honest with ourselves. Most of the time, just speaking from experience, I'm focused on the day-to-day. I'm not really spending that much time creating goals in the future that achieve what I'm really after in life and answering those big questions. Not that I don't think about them, but most of my time is just spent, what do I have to do today? Like, what's on my task list? And that's reaching a goal for tomorrow, or, a client deadline, or it's just work. This is what I have to do. And it's hard to get out of that mindset and really figure out for ourselves, what are you doing with your life? Where are you heading? What's your trajectory? What are you trying to do? Like those questions, I don't know. You got to answer them for yourself, I think, at some level before you can answer them for a group of people. Maybe that's not true. But if you can't answer it for your own life, then how are you going to answer it for a big group of people?
Yeah, I get that.
It's tricky.
It is tricky.
Again, no answer. Just saying words.
I was waiting for Mike to say something really smart. So
I know he had some wisdom.
I'm just completely depressed. No.
Yeah, we're all going to be jobless in 6 months because of AI. There's no point in living any longer.
It's no joke. That's why that's kind of the core of this podcast too. That's the drive for everything I'm doing is like the AI nuttiness. I'm like, I sound like a nut job, I think, to so many people, which blows my mind. But I'm like, dang, do some research and you're going to be a nut job too. This is no joke. This is changing everything.
Well, due to my beliefs, I've sounded like a nut job for a really long time. So I'm used to that piece.
I think going into
That's
it
good.
Makes it even more important to anchor yourself in truth, because that's the
100%.
other thing. That's the other thing with AI is that, the disinformation that it's able to create.
Oh yeah.
Is beyond anything that we've ever seen as far as propaganda goes, and it's going to get 10 times worse.
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to be able to believe what you see or hear ever. Doesn't matter. And if you don't have an anchor like God in your life, that is a constant that never changes, that you always, reorient yourself to, people are just going to be blown in the wind. They already are. Look at our society as a whole, but
exactly,
it's going to get worse. So, if there's anything
far worse,
if there's anything more important, if Jesus isn't the most important thing, I don't know what else you got. Honestly, I don't. So.
I'm really encouraged, though. I think this younger generation is starting to come back to God a lot. I think they have seen some things go off the rails, and they're seeing just kind of the lunacy that's in our society right now, and they're saying that this can't be right. And and it's anecdotal, I know, but just seeing what my son's groups of friends are doing, and that they've been able to build a weekly Bible study group. That's, 40 guys, 40 men showing up, young men showing up every single week and breaking off into little groups and discussing the Bible. And it's incredible. So I'm encouraged by that. And I may just be in my little area of the world, being in the Bible Belt, but I don't know. It's encouraging to me. So hopefully other people are seeing that too.
Maybe that's a good angle, I guess, to take, is like, you do have groups of men meeting already throughout the country for the spiritual side of it. If you could align, guildsmen or a movement that brought in the direction or sort of the purpose of like, what do we do with this? I think you'd find a lot of guys who would jump into something like that.
And I think there's some opportunity there. And I thought about this a little bit. And I even mentioned it in some of the documents that we tried to put together with looking at trial of discipline and then trial of fire even. It was sort of pairing with church groups, because I know a lot of churches have men's groups, that they go out and do labor, the guys get together and they go fix something, or, put a house together for something, whatever, pass out food. But I think you could probably leverage that to some extent. If you had a church that was willing to go along and with it, I don't know exactly what's there. I feel like there's something there, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Like, how do you go about getting that to work with guildsmen? I'm sure there's a lot of like-minded guys in there, but I know a lot of a lot of folks in the church would have trouble getting political or getting going down that road. So I don't know. It feels like there would be something there to me, but I don't know if there is. Maybe that would be a way to kind of get, to me, that's sort of a force multiplier a little bit. You're able to get those. You have an instant group. You have a group that's already there, and if you can kind of affiliate with them, instead of trying to build something organically through just word of mouth or a few people that in your community, you've got a group of guys set up there that, and maybe they don't have interest, but maybe they know somebody, or maybe a couple of the guys in the group would be interested in kind of going out with you. So maybe that's something to look at. I don't know.
Yep. If you had a strong problem we were trying to solve, I think that's what it just comes back to, that same problem of what are we doing? Well, what else, gang? Anything else?
You said you had some questions for us. Did you want to?
Oh yeah, we kind of went over it. I did to just, maybe we did cover this already, but my question to you guys was, and I wanted to see where you guys were at with your, how doomy was your future looking when you looked into the future? Obviously mine's pretty gloomy.
It's rough.
Yeah.
Are you talking about society in general, or just,
I am, man, it's everything. Like I said, you can look, I think, in any direction into the future, and it's hard to look at it and think, yeah, man, things are going to be great. Things look really good for the future of almost any direction. But all of my stuff comes back to, I sound like a broken record, but AI to me is the only thing that we should be concerned about for it to me, destroys every other problem you could look at into the future. It's so much bigger. But anyway, so the question was, I wanted to kind of gauge to see where you guys were at on that front, looking toward the future. And the question was, assuming that the future, regardless of what you think of it, looks like we need strong men to stand up, because we're going to go through some hard times. What areas do you feel like need the most changing, like for yourself personally, and just in general with men in society? We've talked a lot about different areas that we work on. with guildsmen and have tried to build those into the trial of will and trial of discipline. But, if you could boil that down again, if you condensed time and instead of thinking like, oh, we've got forever, we can make our own future. If it was sort of like, no, you've got 3 months, just to condense that time, what would you focus on, or what would be your message to like, here's what, men need to do, or what would be your rallying cry, your advice for yourself and advice for others, I guess?
Yeah, personally, so my advice for others, I'll start there. I would be that crazy soothsayer on the corner with the sandwich board saying, repent, Jesus is coming. That would be my, if I had to put it on a sandwich board and go stand on the side of the road somewhere. I mean, I think everything in my life, everywhere I've gone wrong, can be traced back to my lack of relying on God and not acknowledging his part in what I was trying to do. And so I think for me personally, while I've accepted a lot of those things, there's still a part of me that's fighting it. Like some things, like I haven't fully. I'm sure everybody goes through this to a degree. I mean, you have things that you're constantly working on, trying to make yourself, and some guys are better at it than others, but just being disciplined in certain specific areas. I mean, I would say that if somebody looked at my schedule, they'd say, wow, this guy's pretty disciplined, but there's certain things that I do that I really need to work more on. Certain things probably could be a lot better financially, could probably, smarter with what I do, and could probably be a lot more giving. I give regularly. I have things set up to just automatically come out of my paycheck, but I probably could find ways to do more with my quote unquote free time. That's that sort of thing. But so I don't know. I don't mean to monopolize it, so I'll shut up now.
I think Mike, we have similar goals there when it comes to especially faith-based stuff. That needs to be front and center. For me, it's just being a good dad.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Teaching that faith to my kids is the most important thing I can do. But just being the example there, being present, teaching them things. I always joke, my dad was kind of like this when I was growing up. He kind of let me figure things out on my own, which is a great skill to learn, is to be able to self-teach. But at the same time, I think kids need constant direction right now, and being the role model for my kids and teaching them to be strong is going to be worth its weight in gold in the future. So that would be where I would concentrate my time and effort.
Nick, wow, you really hit home with that. I mean, yeah, man, my dad, and I mean, I had an amazing dad.
Same here. I have nothing against that.
I didn't take that because I know. I mean, my dad did a lot of that. You learn the hard way, and especially with like politics and religion and things like that. We never talked about that sort of stuff when I was growing up, and I've really made it a point to talk to my kids about it and really try to explain, why certain things are the way they are and why things are right and wrong. And
I guess it's those hard conversations more than just showing them how to do something. You can learn skills on your own. Not that I wouldn't teach my kids that, but it's like having those deep conversations and trying to set them on the right path when it comes to things. And that's a full-time job for me, especially.
Yeah. I'm amazed at how open they are to hearing that sort of stuff too. Cause I figured they'd be like, oh, shut up, Dad. I don't want to talk about this, but man, they're like, oh yeah, I really see how this impacts me, or, why do people do this? Or, so.
They ask me 1,000 questions, and it's a good thing too. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Man, I could keep going forever. I don't want to take up all of you guys' time. I don't know what you have going on.
No, this is great. I appreciate you reaching out, and I mean, anytime it's a slow news day, and you need somebody to fill in, give me a yell. Happy to.
I will. Oh man.
Anytime you have to scrape the bottom of the barrel for content.
No, this was good. My mind is spinning. I have so many thoughts. It's man. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're, I'm in this place of like angst where I'm just like, I want to run somewhere, but where do I run? Which way do I go? I don't know. So I just keep staying in the same spot, and I just keep building up angst. Like, let's go. Part of me wants to run and just give up on like, I don't know, almost like responsibilities of like, you do this, you work for this long, you get a retirement, you go, this is the process. Part of me is just like, that's stupid. We don't have time for that. I'm going to go this direction. Then part of me comes back is like, well, wait, hey, hold on. You don't know what's going to happen. And it's it's such a tricky time. I'm in such a, I don't know. It's like,
maybe you're just subconsciously trying to condition yourself for the fact that there's not going to be any Social Security or any kind of thing like that. You're just saying, I'm never going to be able to retire anyway, so I might as well just love the idea of working until I'm 95.
I mean, we joke about that, but isn't that just like the saddest thing?
It is.
Not that I want Social Security in the first place, but that should be optional.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Well, none of us are going to be here long enough, anyways.
That's true.
We're going to live forever. Which one is it going to be?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they may, put our brain into a AI powered.
I know. It's a weird thought. Oh my gosh.
Cyborgs running around. I think
that's what some guy I was listening to. This is totally off topic, because if you point me in the direction of AI, I go crazy. But he was saying, which I thought was so interesting and made me think like, dang, I guess that could be. He was like, if you're of like our age and younger, there's a high probability that we, barring any kind of extreme something that happens, but we probably won't die of natural causes. We'll probably either be, probably wiped out by AI. And man, I say that and everyone's just like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, do some research. It's no joke. Or if things somehow work well, then, maybe we'll keep living forever or for a long, long time. I was like, I don't know. I went deep down the rabbit hole, as you can tell.
I don't want to live forever. I'm good on that.
Well, how long would you? I've been asking people that, like, if you could choose, like, how long you lived, and your family could live that long with you, how long would you go for?
It depends on quality of life. So
yeah, that's true.
So like,
if you could pause life right now and you just keep, I'm like, man, I think I'd go forever. But then I'm like, no, like things are probably going to be better. Like, when I do leave this world, I don't know what that'll look like, but it's going to be better than this. So, but then that's kind of I don't know.
I think I don't know what, around the 100 mark, assuming that you can still get around and do things and you're not like, I want to be able to, participate. If I can't do that, then there's no point in just check out,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't want to be.
But I mean, I think I'm 40 now. I mean, 100 years.
Oh, we're the same age. Yeah.
Another 60 years of this. I don't know if I could take that or not. I think I'd be ready to go after.
Well, then you think like the last 20, maybe 30 could be uncomfortable, depending on how well you age. It's not like you just keep living great to 100 years. It's like
That's true.
Like you said, if you could, man, isn't it funny? You hit a certain age. I'll stop talking, but isn't it weird? You hit a certain age and you sound like your parents, where you start thinking about like, taking care of yourself, like physically, and like what you're eating and all of that stuff becomes really, really important. Cause you're like, dang, like I've got to, I don't know. It's going to affect like what the quality of your later years are going to be like is what I've never thought about before. But recently I've been like, oh yeah, I want to live like very well until I just like, boop, it's over. I don't want a slow decline.
I think movement's the biggest thing. Honestly, I mean, just
Yep.
we're so sedentary, and strength training is good. I think, especially for older people, just because you always need to be able to get up and down. The strength training rabbit hole, I've been kind of going down that lately. When it comes to religion, for some reason, I've really went down the apologetics rabbit hole. Really being able to argue for what you believe in, and not just like quote unquote blind faith. So
totally.
Hey, that's interesting, Nick, because I've always been somebody that like, when religion comes up, I always just kind of take a back seat and listen. But the more I read the Bible and the more I kind of, do devotionals and things like that, the more comfortable I am talking about it. And I feel like that's my job now. I'm like, so that's interesting that you said that.
Start going down the apologetics rabbit hole on YouTube, or anywhere. I think I gave you that book the last time we talked. That's a great book to read.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of that was, you're kind of, what if I listen to a debate or an argument and it makes me question my faith? So there's like, in the back of my mind, there's always that fear, like I would hear something. I know this sounds crazy. I mean, I'm not the only Christian that's ever went through this, but what if somebody logically convinces me that God doesn't exist or that my religion's wrong? And that is a fear. That is a insecurity that I really had to fight to get over, because I don't want to be the guy that just says, well, it just says so, or, it's because I believe so. Well, why do you believe what you believe? Can you back that up? And the more you go down and the more you research, the more you realize there's so much truth and logic and facts involved with what you believe, at least what I believe, that I have pretty good standing to make a case for why I have the belief that I have. So,
Nick, we should do a podcast on that, because that's I kind of that's sort of what happened to me. Is I won't go into the details, but I fell out of faith where I could not get it back. No matter what I tried, I could not believe again. I told people, it's like, well, okay, you go and believe in Santa Claus. Can you force yourself? You can't force yourself to believe something. This is where I came from. But anyway, so it's kind of similar to what your fear was. I'd be so interested to like do a conversation where I could just like, we could just go at it. Like, you know what I mean? Like I could share some of like what took me out of it, where my brain was at. And I think that would be probably a helpful conversation for people.
I would like to hear a couple of the arguments that caused you to question, because there's been times where I've seen something even in a debate between an atheist and a Christian or whoever's debating, but it's, having that argument, and the non-believer will say something and I can't wrap my brain around it at the time. And I'm like, oh man, that's a tough question. Yeah. That's putting what I believe on the spot. And that fear creeps in. You're like, well, what if I can't answer that question? And usually I have to give myself time. And funny enough, I had to digest that for a while. And then funny enough, usually within 2 or 3 days, I will be poking around and the answer will come to me. Meaning like somebody will have already talked about it in a video, and I click on that video and I might not even be thinking about the question that I had a couple of days ago, but it gets answered for me.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's interesting.
I try to not get so anxious about those things when I come across them. I just okay, I'm gonna internalize that for a little bit, think about that, and then go looking around.
Yeah. Well,
instead of just jumping to conclusions, some people just, that's it.
They just give an answer. Yeah, yeah, and then you sound like an idiot, and you're like, well, that's not even what I meant. But I've found, because I'm on sort of like the other side of this now, but But I've learned this for myself. There are some questions you're not going to have an answer to that. And if that's what's preventing you from, having like God as your anchor, then that's kind of on you. I think you can't logically figure God out. You can't. That's what I've learned, anyways. You can't have answers to all of your questions. It can't be like, well, until I get these answered, I won't believe. It's like, then you're never going to believe, because there is an element of faith to this.
Sure.
Because
Definitely.
you're not going to, you know what I mean? So that I kind of was able to get around a lot of those holdups that I had, because it's like, what do you want? That's I don't know.
Yeah, there's no way either one of us can prove our positions, really. I mean, there's
yeah, exactly.
I mean, you can't go back thousands or hundreds of however you believe the whole the Earth is. We go. That's a whole different debate. But
yeah, that's right.
Whatever you believe there, I mean, like, okay, well, you can't go back and know for sure. So,
some of those questions, you're diminishing the power of God. If you're trying to believe, or you do believe in a God that is in too much extent unknowable, because we're just
outside. He's outside
humans,
of us. Yeah,
completely outside. Like if I could understand every bit about God, then he would basically be me. So there's going to be elements that you can't understand. So I think coming to grips with that was helpful for me.
Yeah, but when it comes to those questions, it's like, which one makes more sense, from a Christian worldview or from an atheistic or worldly point of view?
You're right. And that's true.
You can't necessarily answer, but you can say, well, this one makes more sense to me. You know what I mean?
Yep. Cool, guys. That's all I had. If you guys don't have anything else.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you.
It was fun catching up.
Yeah, good to talk to you.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Take care,
See you
guys.
Be good.